people don't even know that they have a basic human right to be able to get access to information about themselves and their own bodies that can change their lives. Every person should have the ability to get that type of test, because if you understand that early that you're at risk, there's a lot more that you can do about it. And we'd like to see a world in which every person gets access to this type of basic testing, and the types of tests that are done are ones that provide insight into the onset of disease in time to do something about it. I believe the individual is every person, but we can't engage the individual unless individuals do so. Sure. Over the last 11 years, we've reinvented the traditional laboratory infrastructure.
And what about the deep voice? Did she have the deep voice when you were dealing with her?
No. I was shocked when I heard her voice, because I'd met her before. That is a voice you don't forget in a woman. Oh, hello.
The story of Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes is one of ambition, deception, and the dangers of unchecked Silicon Valley hype. Once hailed as a revolutionary entrepreneur that was poised to change the world of medicine, Elizabeth, she convinced investors, politicians, and also the media that her company's breakthrough blood testing technology would democratize healthcare. Theranos was supposed to make medical diagnostics faster, cheaper, and even more accessible. And this was supposed to be done through a very small device that Elizabeth claimed would be capable of running hundreds of tests with just a few drops of blood. However, beneath the surface, Elizabeth Holmes was orchestrating one of the biggest corporate frauds in modern history. The technology, of course, it did not work. That's why I'm sitting down here speaking to you guys. But anyways, the technology did not work. Internal dissent, they were silenced, and Theranos misled investors and so many patients. And by the time the truth came out, Elizabeth's carefully crafted empire just crumbled before her very eyes, and this led to federal fraud charges, a criminal conviction, and lastly, a prison sentence. This video essay is going to explore the rise, the fall, and the midpoint of Theranos. I'm also going to talk about the strategic deception that Elizabeth Holmes employed, the roles of key players in the scandal, and I'm also going to talk about the broader implications for the tech and healthcare industry. But that being said, let me introduce myself. Hi guys, my name is Jewel and welcome to my channel. On this channel, I just speak about whatever I want to speak about, whether they are trendy or not. I do deep dives, commentary. I speak about anything, history, anything that just piques my interest. So if you'd want to see me next week, kindly click the like button, subscribe, please turn on notifications, because if you rely on YouTube's homepage, there'll be a possibility that you may not even see me on your homepage. So please turn on your post notifications so that you get an alert every time I post the content, and with that you guys would be helping me out. But that being said, let's get straight into the word for today. So the word for today says, in every challenge lies an opportunity for growth. In every challenge lies an opportunity for growth. And this is from my journal, the Manifesto of Vision journal. So it's a complete guide to journaling. It has literally everything you need for journaling, from shadow work prompts to weekend prompts, dream journaling. Literally, it has everything you need for journaling. So if you're in a journey of self-improvement, self-actualization, and you just need something to just document your journey, my journal is literally the best for you. If you want to purchase it, the link is in my description box and also in my about section. So with that, you guys are literally helping me and helping this channel to grow and for me to post more quality content. That being said, let's get straight into this video. So guys, today we're talking about Elizabeth Holmes, and if you do not know her, I am going to tell you about this scammer. Yeah, she had good intentions in my own opinion, but she went about it the very wrong way and it came out to bite her before her own very eyes. But who is Elizabeth Holmes? Elizabeth Holmes' journey to becoming one of the most talked about names in Silicon Valley didn't happen by accident. She was born in 1984 in Washington, D.C. into a family where ambition wasn't just encouraged, it was expected. Her father, Christian Holmes IV, was a man who moved through powerful circles. He worked in government agencies like USAID, and later he also worked in a company, an energy company called Enron. And during my research, I found out that this company was involved in scandal and it no longer exists, but it has a Wikipedia page. It's a troubled energy company that was also involved in a scandal. Anyways, her mom, Noel Holmes, was a congregational staffer, and this is a role that just kept her closely connected to the corridors of power. From the very beginning, Elizabeth, she was surrounded by successful, driven people, and this environment just set the stage for her own lofty ambitions. Growing up, Elizabeth was unapologetically competitive. She didn't just want to succeed, she wanted to change the world. Family members, they remember how she was very determined to have a legacy that would be remembered for generations.
The kind of determination that she had from such a young age around what she wanted to do and the level of focus that she set, that has stayed true for her.
Her dream wasn't to just simply accumulate wealth, but her dream was also to make a very profound impact. And there's even a point where she said that she wanted to be a billionaire, not just because of the money, but because of the power that it would give her to just make a difference in the world.
I wanted to do something with my life that people thought was impossible before.
And this kind of mindset would later in life just shape the way that she approached everything, from school to eventually her business ventures. Even as a child, Elizabeth was fascinated by invention. She had this natural drive to just solve problems, and her imaginations, they were boundless.
I was 9 years old when I wrote this, and it begins, "Dear Daddy, what I want out of life is to discover something new, something that mankind didn't know was possible. I also want to study about man and his ways. Life is really interesting. I love being with you. It's my most favorite thing in the whole world. Love, Elizabeth."
But with this fierce drive just came an equally strong fear of failure. For Elizabeth, not succeeding was not an option, because if she felt like she was failing or she was about to fail, to her it felt like she hadn't fulfilled her own potential in life. Due to this, she had an idol. Her idol was Steve Jobs, and in case you don't know who Steve Jobs was, he was literally the founder or the co-founder of Apple. And Steve Jobs was someone who embodied innovation, and because obviously Apple is something that everybody has. You have either a MacBook or an iPhone, and iPhone users, they are so emotionally attached to their phone. So obviously Steve Jobs creating something that even after his death, people are still using and people are still attached to it, just made Elizabeth Holmes just love him more. And Elizabeth just saw him not just as a business leader, but also as a role model. She admired his boldness, his ability to disrupt industries, and the way that he created a revolutionary product that had a very deep emotional connection with its users. She took his example to heart and she adopted his black turtleneck uniform, his minimalistic approach, and also his obsession with perfections in the products that she dreamt of creating. And I know I'm wearing turtleneck. I'm not doing it because this is a turtleneck video. I literally just picked up the first thing in my wardrobe and I literally wore it. So if it fits the occasion, her. But if it doesn't, still her. But anyways, in 2002, Elizabeth, she made a very bold move because this was when she joined Stanford University. University. And in case you do not know what Stanford University is, it is literally one of the top schools in the world. When she was in Stanford University, she studied chemical engineering, and she studied chemical engineering because she was driven by a desire to just gain the scientific knowledge that she needed to bring her own vision to life. It was here that she met a professor called Professor Channing Robertson, and he is a well-respected figure in the world of chemical engineering. He later on will become one of her biggest supporters. But despite the excitement of being in a university like Stanford University and the life that came with being in Stanford University, and obviously being in university, you're going to have all this rigorous curriculum. Elizabeth, on the other hand, despite all these things, she was still thinking beyond the classroom, because just after 2 years, she made a very huge decision that would change everything. She dropped out of Stanford. She dropped out of Stanford because she was fully convinced that she had an idea that would revolutionize healthcare, and that was the birth of Theranos.
I was at a point where another few classes in chemical engineering was not necessary for what I wanted to do.
Steve Jobs dropped out of college, Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of college, Bill Gates dropped out of college.
But instead of the patch, she ultimately shifted her focus to developing a blood analyzing machine.
Theranos was a company that at the time, it seemed like a perfect image of ambition, technology, and also hope.
This used to be my advisor's office, and I would sit here, literally here in the hallway, waiting for him to come back to his office to try to convince him to let me into his graduate research program. And I think I probably spent the equivalent of months just sitting on the floor here. My family was amazing. I'll be grateful all my life. I called them and informed them that I would be leaving Stanford, and they let me take the money that they both had saved working all their lives for my brother and I to be able to go to college, and put it into starting the company. We used to come up with concepts of companies that we would build together when we were like 2 and 4 with little stuffed animals or Lego blocks and all this kind of stuff. He's always been my very best friend.
So now, let's talk about the birth of Theranos.
You founded this company 12 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Tell them how old you were.
I was 19. I was 9 years old when I wrote this, and it begins, "Dear Daddy, what I want out of life is to discover something new, something that mankind didn't know was possible. I also want to study about man and his ways. Life is really interesting."
At just the age of 19, Elizabeth, she founded Theranos, and Theranos is a name that cleverly combined the word therapy and diagnosis. Her ideas seem deceptively simple but yet ambitious. What if we could test for diseases with just a few drops of blood instead of the traditional method of drawing multiple vials of blood?
What if you could test your blood in your own home? And what if it wasn't a whole vial, but just a drop?
Elizabeth, she envisioned a world where people could just simply prick their fingers, drop a tiny amount of blood onto a device, and instantly these people would receive results for hundreds and hundreds of diagnostic tests. This vision was so groundbreaking. It promised to change the way that healthcare worked for good. And it's also safe to say that before Elizabeth Holmes founded Theranos, the company was originally called Real Time Cures, and she changed the name from Real Time Cures to Theranos because she was just scared that people were going to feel intimidated by the word cures and may not want to use the service. But her change in name just reflected the company's focus on developing technology for real-time medical diagnostics. However, when she named her company Real Time Cures, at that point she just wanted to focus on developing technology for real-time medical diagnostics, but she just had a problem with the word cures. This was when she later changed the name to Theranos, which is a combination of the word therapy and diagnosis, which honestly I actually prefer. Theranos is a very good name, and this aligned it more closely with her vision of revolutionizing healthcare through blood testing technology. Elizabeth wasn't just selling a product, she was selling hope. She claimed that her technology would make it very possible for one to detect diseases early and also enable doctors to catch illnesses like cancer and diabetes long before they became life-threatening. According to her, she said that this device was going to be cheap, was going to be fast, and was going to be accessible to everyone. Literally, you could either be a soldier on the battlefield fighting wars, when once you have Theranos machine, which was called Edison, but once you have it, everything will be fine. Like, you could be in the comfort of your home and still be able to test your blood without having to go to lab or going to the hospital. The potential for this technology to save lives and reduce healthcare costs was so vast, and Elizabeth, she painted a picture of a world where blood testing would no longer be something that would require a trip for you to go to the hospital or to the lab, but rather you could just have this painless process in your house. Literally, as far as you have the machine in your house, everything would be fine. It would be cheap, it would be painless. You can literally see the disease you have on this device. The implications, they were enormous, and obviously the two largest diagnostic industry in the world, that is Quest Diagnostic and LabCorp, they could be replaced by just a simple device that could just bring life-saving tests to anybody. At that time, it sounded like a dream come true for Theranos. But the thing is, Elizabeth was building a myth. So here, I'm going to talk about how Elizabeth attracted investors and supporters to support this dream of hers. Despite the lack of solid proof that the technology actually worked, Elizabeth's ability to sell her vision was unparalleled. She didn't just need investors, she just needed people who believed in her and who believed in her mission. And that's exactly what she did. She convinced some of the most powerful, influential people to back her, even though she didn't even have the scientific data to support the claims she did. Elizabeth knew that traditional biotech investors would demand technical validation and also scrutiny, and they would likely be skeptical of her ideas. So what she did was that she strategically targeted investors who had big pockets but did not have the technical expertise to challenge her claims. So they would just drop the money without asking her for proof that this actually really did work. And she didn't just focus on proving that the technology worked. Instead, she played the credibility game. She leveraged her connections and her charisma just to create an aura of trustworthiness. And I'm going to list some of the people that invested into her dreams. So her first investor is Rupert Murdoch. So Rupert Murdoch is a media mogul, and he invested a staggering $125 million. And I'm telling you guys, buy my journal. Buy my journal. So basically, he invested $125 million. And then we have the Walton family, who is the heir to Walmart fortune, and they poured in a staggering $150 million in Theranos. Again, yo, please buy my journal, because $150 million into an empty dream. What the hell? Another one is Betsy DeVos. So Betsy DeVos, or DeVos, I don't know, but I like to think that the S is silent. But anyway, so Betsy DeVos, the former US Secretary of Education, also invested $100 million. Is that how much you guys pay your politicians over there in the United States of America? Because US Secretary of Education having $100 million spare to just invest. And again, Secretary of Education, you should be educated to know and ask questions. Why didn't you do that? That's a red flag. Anyways, another person that invested is Larry Ellison, who is a co-founder of Oracle, and he was an early believer in Elizabeth's vision and also played a very crucial role in Theranos' rise. And hi Larry, if you're seeing this, sponsor me, okay? Because I used to use it when I was younger. But that being said, what these investors did not know, or what they chose to overlook, was that there was no independent verification that this technology worked as Elizabeth Holmes claimed. Elizabeth's ability to sell the dream and for people to gain trust through her high-profile connection was far more powerful than any scientific data could have presented. But perhaps the most remarkable part of Elizabeth's pitch wasn't just the investors, it was the board of directors that she actually did build. Because instead of surrounding herself with scientists, she brought in powerful figures who would impress the world. This board was made up of political heavyweights, former government officials who brought a sense of durability, credibility, and influence that would make anybody believe in Theranos. The first person that was in her board of directors was Henry Kissinger, who was the former US Secretary of State. She also had George Shultz, who was another former US Secretary of State. She also had James Mattis, who was another former US Secretary of Defense. Maybe I should be another US Secretary of State or Defense, because it feels like y'all pay your politicians a lot. Y'all pay them so much. But anyways, another person that was on her board of directors was Richard Kovacevic, who was the former CEO of Wells Fargo. These people, they were so powerful, they were respected, and most importantly, they had no medical expertise whatsoever. But their names and their reputations were just enough to just lend an air of legitimacy to Theranos. And because obviously these people were on the board of directors, nobody questioned whether they knew anything about technology. They were just supposed to be proof that the company was on the right track. And for a while, it worked, because by 2014, Theranos had raised more than $700 million in funding, with the company valued at a staggering $9 billion by Forbes. Elizabeth was hailed as a visionary, and she was celebrated as the youngest self-made female billionaire with a net worth of $4.5 billion. She was a media darling. She appeared on the covers of magazines like Forbes, Time, and Fortune magazine, and she spoke at prestigious events like the Clinton Global Initiative. She also had like TED Talks that she spoke. She also spoke in panels alongside other world leaders, and to so many people, she was just the next Steve Jobs, an innovator that was going to change the world. Before I move on, if you go to Forbes and you type Elizabeth Holmes or whatever, literally right now, Forbes has estimated her income to be 0.00. And the thing is, like, researching her was just an evidence of the rich just going down and just being completely broke. How you get them is how you lose them, literally. But anyways, while the world celebrated her success, behind the scenes, cracks in the foundation of Theranos began to form. So now, this is what we're going to talk about, the illusion of a breakthrough. And here we're going to talk about when she launched her machines in Walgreens. Because by 2013, Theranos was poised to make a massive splash in the healthcare industry. And after years of hype, the company had convinced Walgreens. In case you don't know what Walgreens is literally one of the largest pharmacy chains in the US, and that is just like Boots in the UK. So basically, Theranos had convinced Walgreens to partner with them in this groundbreaking venture. Together, they aimed to bring affordable, convenient blood testing to the masses, and this launch was supposed to be a very revolutionary launch. It was supposed to be a new way to access diagnostic services, and was supposed to be available in every corner of the country or at your local Walgreens store.
Healthcare is the leading cause of bankruptcy.
You'll see her either in a black turtleneck or a white lab coat, taking a high-tech approach to blood testing. Instead of a needle to the arm, it's a pinprick to the finger. Holmes is marketing Theranos as a faster and cheaper alternative to a process that hasn't meaningfully changed in decades.
So how does it work?
First, we've created these little tiny tubes, which we call the nanotainers, which are designed to replace the big traditional tubes that come from your arm, and instead allow for all the testing to be done from a tiny drop from a finger.
Theranos has struck a partnership with drugstore chain Walgreens to build thousands of wellness centers, like this one in Palo Alto. Every center would offer a menu of blood tests, ranging from cancer to cholesterol, directly to consumers. And every test, Holmes says, would cost only a fraction of Medicare prices.
This partnership was heralded as the next best thing in health and wellness. The concept was simple and alluring, and instead of enduring the usual painful, often inconvenient process of drawing large vials of blood at a hospital or at a laboratory, Theranos just claimed that the machine would only require you to just prick your finger, most likely your thumb, and with that, it could just process hundreds of tests on a very single drop of blood, returning results in just a few hours. According to Theranos, this act would be simple, it will be faster, and most importantly, it will be accessible to millions of people, many of whom didn't have regular access to medical laboratory.
Holmes says she wants to make this sort of testing available anywhere, anytime.
There's no reason why these can't be distributed in very, very decentralized locations.
Your home?
Yeah.
Do you think people's homes should have these, essentially a clinical laboratory in their own house?
I think that's a very interesting space.
But wherever the tests occur, the results need to be precise and accurate. And that's where the story of Theranos starts to crumble.
And let me tell you guys something. Unpopular opinion, but I think, and this is coming from someone who doesn't like needles. I know I have all these piercings and tattoos or whatever, and like, trust me, I hate the process of getting tattoos because they are so painful, but I still get them anyways because I love how they look after. But I prefer my blood being drawn than for me to prick my fingers. So basically, I check myself every 3 months, and there is this thing in the UK, it's free if you want to do like sexual health check. So it's called SHL, and you just apply and they send you your medical kits to your house free of charge. You don't pay for anything. You just prick your finger and you swab your inside, and then you send it to them, and then when you send it to them, they are going to give you your result or whatever. Trust me, I prefer going into the hospital, into a health clinic, into a sex clinic, and just take my blood out, because in the UK healthcare is free. So I prefer just going there and just taking my blood out, because pricking my thumb, that shit hurts, and it hurts for like 5 days, like 6 days, whatever. Like, it hurts a lot, and honestly, I cannot. And it's like I'm self-harming, like I'm poking myself. No, like it just hurts. Especially when the spring just goes into your hand. Like, it hurts me so bad. So I prefer just keeping my hand there and just screaming as the blood is drawing out of me. It's just my own unpopular opinion. But let me know, what do you guys prefer? Do you guys prefer to poke or prick your fingers, or do you guys prefer the traditional method of drawing blood? But then again, I can see where Elizabeth is coming from, because obviously as someone who hates needles, you will be looking for revolutionary ways to just make everything faster, cheaper, and not having to go all the way to the hospital to get your blood being checked. But even though her intentions were good, the way she went around it was what made her suffer at the end. But anyways, let's go back to Theranos, or the machine called Edison, in Walgreens. The marketing behind this public launch was nothing short of brilliant. Elizabeth Holmes, she positioned herself as a visionary, promising a solution that could disrupt the healthcare system and drastically reducing the cost of medical fees. The media and her investors were already enamored with her, so when Walgreens rolled out the Theranos test stations in their stores, it was met with severe excitement, and also so many people anticipated this launch. They advertised the process as a quick, easy, and transformative ways, and due to the way the whole process behind the launch happened, it became very, very successful, and customers, they lined up because they were so eager to try the service for themselves. But behind the flashy press release and the glowing media coverage, reality was far less glamorous. What the public did not know at that time was that the Edison device, which is the Theranos device, so basically the Edison device, which was meant to power this test, was not only unreliable, but they did not even come close to meeting the claims that Elizabeth had made. The technology, it failed, and instead of using the supposed revolutionary machine, Theranos, they had to rely on traditional laboratory equipment. This Edison device, it wasn't capable of conducting the test, so blood samples that people came to take, and again, people were promised that they would just prick their fingers. Some of them came out and they said allegedly they had their hands being poked like the traditional ways in which blood is being taken out of you. But anyways, these blood samples, they were shipped via FedEx to a central lab in Arizona where they were tested using the same standard existing medical technology that Elizabeth Holmes claimed that she wanted to eradicate. Customers, they had no idea and they thought that they were just getting this cutting-edge test that would revolutionize their healthcare. But in reality, they were simply getting the same blood test that they could have gotten at any regular lab, albeit with a faster and less accurate process. The real damage of this deception just came in form of incorrect test results. Patients who walked into Walgreens, they were eager to get their health checked and they ended up with false information about their condition, sometimes with life-altering consequences. And did I say allegedly, some of these test results did not even come that day, came literally some days after. And let's not forget, Elizabeth promised that this Edison device would tell you your diagnosis and the diseases that you have and will be able to catch early before it happens, and it will tell you in just a few hours. But the thing is, it did not. Like literally, they had to allegedly take these blood samples to a lab in Arizona, and most people did not even get their result that same day. For example, some patients who had tests for cancer received false positive. Imagine just being told that you might have cancer only to go through unnecessary and invasive follow-up processes, tests, surgeries, or procedures, all because these results were based on inaccurate data. The emotional and the financial toll of this false alarm is so unimaginable. Other patients, they received false negatives. People who had serious medical conditions like diabetes, they were being told that their blood sugar level, they were perfectly fine, only to later find out that they had been misdiagnosed. And by the time they were properly diagnosed, their condition had already worsened, or they may have faced more severe health complications that could have been avoided if it was detected earlier. And in some cases, the delay in diagnosis could have even been more life-threatening.
Of course, in the middle of all this are patients whose health depended on Theranos for accurate results.
There's this man who goes by the initials RC right now in Arizona, who is suggesting that the lab results that he got from Theranos were not accurate, and it led to him having a heart attack. Based on what you know, is it possible that what he's saying is true? Could he have gotten a lab result that was so askew that he didn't act on it, and then a month later he ended up having a heart attack?
I'm not the lab director, and so...
I know, but you're the CEO and founder of the company. I mean, this is as serious as it gets.
What I know is that I've put the best people in place to be able to investigate every aspect of this and ensure that we meet the quality standards that we hold ourselves to, and I know they're doing that.
And one thing you should know is that people trusted the system because of the reputation of Walgreens and also the credibility of Elizabeth Holmes. They believed that Theranos, with its powerful board and lofty promises, was offering a very groundbreaking service, but in reality, the blood that they provided was being tested on outdated standard equipment, completely negating the innovation that they were being sold on. Another thing I should say is that the whole idea of revolutionizing healthcare with a new, more accessible and affordable system was exposed for what it really was, and that was an illusion. So as the test rolled out, more and more issues they began to surface. Some Walgreens employees started to question the process. They noticed discrepancies, and in some cases they refused to perform tests that they knew were very, very inaccurate. But by then, the company company was deeply invested in the partnership. Theranos had already convinced Walgreens to roll out the service nationwide, and the stakeholders, they were already too emotionally and financially invested to just pull back easily. That being said, one thing we should know is that the patients who received wrong test results weren't just statistics. They were real people. They were individuals who believed that they were getting cutting-edge technology and medical services. They had placed their trust in a company that at the time seemed like it was going to change the healthcare landscape forever. Instead, they were being betrayed. And again, we're also speaking about the patients. What of Walgreens that believed in Elizabeth Holmes? But then again, Walgreens being this biggest pharmaceutical company, why didn't you ask to check the machine before you made it go live? Why didn't you? But then again, one thing about Elizabeth Holmes is that she is a very good marketer. She can talk her way out of anything, and she can talk her way to convince you, like the way she speaks, oh my god. And did I say allegedly? Not allegedly, because apparently there's video proof, but I'm going to use allegedly. But anyways, allegedly, she even changed her voice to have like a deeper tone voice. That there was a meeting, an interview that she had with someone that she was talking, and when she was talking, her voice was like calmer and more feminine, and then she realized and took it back to it being masculine.
Over the last 11 years, we've reinvented the traditional laboratory infrastructure. Well, it's wonderful to be here. I started this company because
those who knew her in college, such as Stanford professor Phyllis Gardner, claimed that Elizabeth Holmes did not have the deep voice back then.
And what about the deep voice? Did she have the deep voice when you were dealing with her?
No. I was shocked when I heard her voice because I'd met her before. That is a voice you don't forget in a woman. Oh, hello.
So what did her real voice sound like? There are old interviews floating around on the web in which she sounded quite different.
It turned out he had a nub on his elbow, and we talked to our lab team and they said, okay, you can do the draw. And so they did this, what would have been a finger stick on this little nub on his arm. And
sure, yeah, over the last 11 years, we've reinvented the traditional laboratory infrastructure.
In a 2023 interview with the New York Times, shortly before she was due to begin an 11-year sentence for fraud, Elizabeth Holmes finally admitted that the voice was fake. The former Silicon Valley CEO said she had faked her voice in order to be taken more seriously and to not be seen as a little girl.
Bro, there's nothing wrong with living in your femininity, okay? You are seeing me as this feminine presenting person, but deep down, I'm a masculine femme. I am a masculine femme. I can be a masculine femme. Like, I have a masculine part of me, but I'm very much comfortable with my femininity because I love being feminine. So, yeah, I just thought I should just say that. But anyways, even most masculine people, most masculine presenting people, they have a feminine side that they cherish so much, and I get it, wanting to be on top and everything, but you don't have to fake your entire personality to be respected or to try to prove a point. Hopefully you guys are getting my drift here. But yeah, let's continue. The problem wasn't just about the inaccuracy of this test. It was about the way that Theranos just allowed the deception to continue. Elizabeth Holmes and other executives at Theranos, they were fully aware of the malfunctioning technology, but rather than just pulling the plug on the project, they kept pushing it forward, knowing that every wrong result could be hurting someone's health. But one thing they did was hope that they could fix the problem later. Unfortunately, the fixes never came. And during my research, I just found out that Elizabeth Holmes was this kind of person who always swept things under the carpet. But one thing about sweeping things under the carpet, one day the dirt would be visible, and at that time, things may be too late. So that being said, as the truth began to emerge, it wasn't just the patients that were affected. The public's trust in Theranos started to erode. The idea that a small startup company had the ability to disrupt healthcare was thrilling, but the fact that it was based on a foundation of lies and shortcuts just left a massive scar on the healthcare industry. Walgreens, which was once a proud partner of Theranos, began to quickly distance themselves from the company and eventually eventually Walgreens decided to pull Theranos and the editing device from all of their testing centers and their stores.
A big loss for Theranos. Walgreens now cutting ties with the embattled blood testing company. The drugstore chain says it's ending a partnership with Theranos as regulators mull whether to impose sanctions against the Silicon Valley firm. Walgreens will stop offering Theranos' services at its stores, marking the latest blow for the company. The startup was once praised for its innovative approach, but the biotech firm has come under scrutiny after media reports raised questions over the accuracy of its affordable and less invasive blood testing technology. The bottom line, Theranos feeling the pain.
But the damage was already done. Theranos' reputation crumbled, and with it, so did the health of so many people who were misled. For Elizabeth Holmes, the price of her ambition became very, very clear. What had started as a dream to revolutionize healthcare quickly spiraled into a nightmare, and in the end, the patients who had trusted the company to improve their health had ended up being one of the most affected victims in this tale of deception. That being said, let's talk about the work culture at Theranos, because I'm going to be here to tell you guys for free that the work culture in Theranos was so toxic. Oh my god, like she ran her own cult, but people were not happy in this cult. But anyways, Theranos was once this shining example of Silicon Valley ambition, and this was also a home to one of the most toxic work cultures in modern business history. This woman, she was literally like a modern colonial master, even though the people that were working with her were from every race and every ethnic group, white, black, or whatever. But like she just acted as a colonial master that had slaves working for her. So we're going to talk about that. So basically, Elizabeth Holmes, like we discussed, she is the company's founder, or she was, because the company no longer exists, but she was the founder of Theranos. She was also the CEO, and because she had this power, she cultivated an environment where fear and control ruled, and the employees, they were expected to worship her vision without asking any question. What seemed like a startup that was founded on innovation quickly turned into an oppressive system where employees lived in constant tension and they were afraid to speak up or they will fail. From the moment Elizabeth started building her company, she positioned herself not just as the CEO but also as the face of Theranos. She was determined to model herself after Steve Jobs. She adopted his black turtleneck and also his minimalistic style. Her image as a brilliant, almost godlike figure was carefully crafted, and she expected everybody around her to just buy into this image that she had. Theranos quickly became a company where loyalty to Elizabeth Holmes was non-negotiable. Your opinion was not tolerated. Questioning her vision or the technology's viability was seen as a direct challenge to her authority. People who were employed by her, they were often told that they were part of something that was groundbreaking, something that could change the world, but this ideology was cult-like and it demanded complete devotion to the company's false narrative and also the promises that this company gave to the world. And no matter how far the truth was, the employees had to believe in her vision, and if you did not believe in her vision, or if you did not understand where she was coming from, or if you as little as just opposed, she could get you fired on the spot. The pressure to deliver was immense, and employees, they worked grueling hours, they stayed up all through the night to just meet impossible deadlines, all while fearing that if they didn't do this, they could be replaced at any moment. And they had to again measure up to the standard of Elizabeth Holmes. Exhaustion became the norm, and many workers, they sacrificed their health, they sacrificed their social lives, and they also sacrificed their personal well-being because they were in the hopes of meeting Holmes over ambitious goals. Anyone who expressed doubt about the company's direction, or if they raised concerns about the technology's reliability or quickly dismissed what Elizabeth Holmes said, Theranos didn't allow space for open dialogue or even critical thinking. Instead, employees were expected to perpetuate the company's carefully constructed narrative even when it was being built on falsehood. The culture of silence and secrecy just permeated every level of the company, from the receptionist happens to literally anyone who works in the company. And there was fear of retribution that kept so many people and so many employees in line, even if they had doubts about what Elizabeth Holmes was trying to invent. Because let's not get it twisted, there were some people that told her, was like, let me tell you, like, what you're trying to do is not possible because you just need a small amount of blood. A small amount of blood is not going to tell you all the diseases you're meant to have. Like, it's a thing, obviously it's good that you're dreaming about it, but like, let's be realistic. People tried to tell her, some of her co-workers told her that it wasn't going to work, and whenever they told her this, she would immediately fire them, which we'll speak about later on in this video, because it did not end with firing them. Okay, we'll speak about it later on in this video. So like I said, for those who dared to challenge the narrative of Elizabeth Holmes, the consequences could be very severe. Workers that were fired on the spot for speaking up, often with no warning or no explanation. More than just losing their jobs, many of them were blacklisted within the company and within the industry itself, and this effectively ended their careers. So she would make it so difficult for you to even work in another company, because obviously, let's not forget, Elizabeth Holmes had power, and again, because she really wanted you to feel the effect of questioning her, your career would literally be ended. Anyways, the fear of being shunned just kept many employees quiet and compliant, and this reinforced the toxic atmosphere at Theranos. So Elizabeth Holmes' control over her employees just extended far beyond the office. She created an environment where secrecy wasn't just encouraged, it was demanded. NDAs were constantly handed out, and employees were forced to swear oaths of silence about the company's operations. So many staffs were told that any form of opinion or even the smallest sign of criticism could jeopardize their future at the company. Even there was even a time that Elizabeth, because obviously she wanted yes men around her, she employed people from other countries, maybe like from Asian countries, because she would sponsor their visa, and because she was sponsoring their visa, they would not be able to question her authority because they would not want to go back to their own country, because obviously if she sacks them, she would, I don't know what people call it in America, but in the UK we call it the Home Office. So she would tell the Home Office, like, oh, we're no longer sponsoring this person, and this person would literally go back to their own country. So literally that was what she did. Because she wanted so many yes men around her, she would employ immigrants, because immigrants would not be able to say anything.
Other people described a culture of fear at the company. Entire divisions and teams were siloed away from each other with no communication between them. I'd love to hear more about that culture of fear at Theranos and what that meant for both of you personally.
Yeah, so there would be like barriers up that would surround where the devices were. So even if you were in the lab, you still couldn't see the devices. So like I worked there for 3 months and didn't see a single device. It wasn't until I moved into the assay validation team that I actually saw a device for the first time. And it's kind of crazy to think that you have like most of your company working towards something that they've never even seen. And that's how siloed it was. But I remember there was one funny thing that happened where like a light bulb went out. So they had like an electrician come in, and he stands on this like 12-foot ladder and puts in the light bulb where he can see over all of the barriers. So I saw that happening, and I just thought, I don't know, I feel like those barriers are there like really for, I don't know. It felt weird that they didn't care about the like someone from the outside scene. It seemed like it was a barrier to like make us, like the employees, realize that they weren't supposed to know things.
It was also for the vendors too. We had these machines called T-cans. They were these robotic liquid handling arms, and they'd find it so ridiculous because the moment you entered into Theranos, the first thing that they have you do is sign an NDA and sign like this sort of, like if you do see anything, you are not allowed to disclose what you see inside there. And this was for vendors, new employees, and by the time you were an employee, you've already signed a contract that you cannot disclose anything that you've seen within those halls. But yeah, there were all these weird man-built obstructions. Sometimes they'd be escorted all throughout the building with like 2 security guards to make sure that they didn't see anything.
I actually remember that when I first started, there was a list of words they gave me that I was not allowed to say when describing my job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't remember exactly what was on the list, but it was like pipette, research, biology.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
And you couldn't put it on LinkedIn, you couldn't put it on anything, which was funny because when all this stuff blew up, we had to say we were a part of a private biotech company. So you almost always knew that someone worked at Theranos because they probably had private biotech company on their LinkedIn profile.
But then they had a really intense work culture as well. Like Sunny, the president of the company, would walk through the labs like 3 a.m. to make sure people were there working. Yeah. Just very intense place.
Yeah, and a lot of people were scared of losing their jobs. You know, these people had families that they needed to support and feed, and so constantly feeling the pressure of needing to make Sunny and Elizabeth happy and produce whatever results that they needed to kind of further whatever initiatives that they seem to have come up with those days. There was a lot of pressure to perform and provide the results that they needed. And we had a lot of members of the team who weren't necessarily US citizens too. They were sponsored. They were scared that if they stopped working for Theranos, they would no longer have a visa. But there was a lot of pressure to get the results specifically that Sunny and Elizabeth wanted at any cost. And really a sentiment that if you didn't produce, say, if you didn't get this assay validated and say that, you know, vitamin D is getting the perfectly accurate results, there was something wrong with you. There was nothing wrong with the technology, nothing wrong with, you know, the chemistry. It was like you were not performing well and you weren't getting this done, was generally the culture.
Theranos was known for stalking and surveilling employees who had left the company. Many former workers, after they quit, reported that they were being watched by private investigators that were being hired by Theranos. Some even had their personal lives monitored, and Elizabeth Holmes herself allegedly just kept tabs on former employees through their social media and also their public appearances. This was a very clear attempt to intimidate and silence those who might be considering whistleblowing on the company's failures. But the control didn't just stop there. No, it didn't stop there, because Elizabeth Holmes, she kept close tabs on all her employees. She demanded absolute loyalty. Those who tried to leave or break away from this cult-like movement, they were often threatened with legal action, and many of them were forced to sign financial settlements that prevented them from speaking out against Theranos and against Elizabeth Holmes. Theranos, which is obviously Elizabeth Holmes, used legal intimidation to keep former employees from sharing the truth about the company's internal operations, and this led to a culture where opinions were punished both personally and professionally. Now we've spoken a little bit about the toxic work culture in Theranos. Let's talk about how she deceived her investors and how she sold this illusion to the people who invested in her company. The thing is, I understand building a company, like having a dream, but basically obviously where she went wrong was lying to everyone, especially and even the people who put their money into your dream. Like, if it's not working, like, there's nothing wrong with telling them. Again, I understand the fear of failure that she has, but at the end of the day, it cost her so much when she could have just been truthful from the get-go. But anyways, Elizabeth Holmes' manipulation wasn't just limited to her employees. She also excelled at deceiving her investors. So basically, when high-profile investors came to visit Theranos, they were never shown the true workings of the technology. Instead, Elizabeth Holmes would present a single functioning machine, one that may have been rigged to work just for a very short period of time, and she would also personally oversee the meeting and ensure that any questions about the technology's reliability were met with vague, reassuring answers. Let's not forget, like I said, Elizabeth Holmes, she was so good at speaking, so she was so good at encouraging people and convincing people that something was working when it was literally not working. Anyways, Theranos had no intention of actually proving that its technology worked as promised. And again, what did she think was going to happen in the long run? That's my question. Like, what did she think was going to happen in the long run? Like, you're here doing all this, what do you think was going to happen? That's what I was so confused about. There's so much time you can lie for. I get it. Maybe she thought that in in the future was going to work, but when did you think it was going to work? Like, literally, there's nothing wrong with just being truthful from the get-go. Exactly. Anyways, when investors, they pushed for proof about the machine, Elizabeth Holmes, she would deceive their concerns by claiming that the company was still in the development phase and that the technology was on the verge of being perfected. She used her charisma and her confidence to just convince people that the Edison device would soon be capable of transforming healthcare as they knew it. Confidence to Elizabeth was key, and Elizabeth Holmes, she had that in spades. She charmed investors into believing the impossible promises that this company was selling. This relentless pursuit of funding, despite growing evidence that the company was failing to deliver, allowed Theranos to just stay afloat over the years. And it wasn't the technology that kept Theranos going, but rather it was Elizabeth Holmes' ability to just sell a dream to those who were eager to believe in it. Investors, they continued pouring millions into the company, all while the technology just continued to malfunction. And of course, this puts more and more people at risk. Not only did it put the patient at risk, even the people who were working for the company was put at risk, because these people, they did not go home at night because they had the company works. Elizabeth Holmes was so toxic in her place of work, in her company. She had a very toxic environment for the people who worked for her, that they were so scared to do what she asked them not to do because they could just get fired like on the spot. Now, let's talk about the fall of Theranos. And here I'm going to expose the company and the consequences that this company faced after being exposed.
Why don't you just start by telling us why you quit your job at Theranos?
The first big red flag was the first time I saw the Theranos device, and you could quickly see that it was not what it had been claimed to be. Like, everything inside the device was something that I had already seen before in almost any other laboratory that I had been in up to that time. And you could quickly tell that it couldn't run, hundreds of tests. It couldn't even run 2 tests at the same time. And while I was there, we only got up to running 7 tests total. And if you wanted to run all of those 7 tests at the same time, those would have had to been on 7 different devices. So her claims of running, 300 or whatever tests from a single drop of blood seemed grossly exaggerated. Working with the devices, and I would see that the variations of the results that it produces was very high. And then in our daily lab meetings, we would kind of go over the experiments that we had done in the previous 24 hours and kind of pick and choose about what experiments needed to be repeated. So we would essentially just delete sections of an experiment and repeat it and replace it with new data. And at first that seems kind of weird, but then you eventually kind of like fall into the habit of doing that, and it's a really bad habit. And then I started hearing about the quality controls failing, and this is with my colleagues who are running real patient samples. So they would run the quality controls for the day and they would fail, and then some select cases they would be pressured to run patient samples anyway, even though we knew that the test wasn't functioning properly. And then quality controls would fail multiple days in a row, which is a really bad sign because statistically you should know how often a quality control should fail. And we were failing way more often than that, and we were coming up with ways on how to prevent reporting quality control failures. And then there was an incident where the CLIA inspectors came to inspect the laboratory, but they essentially locked the door to the room that had all the Theranos devices in, so they only saw like the third-party Siemens, FDA cleared type equipment. And when we got that sample, we split it and we ran it on the Theranos devices and the Siemens equipment. And the results were off by sometimes more than 300%. And we decided to report the results from the Siemens equipment, not from the Theranos devices, even though we were running patient samples on the Theranos devices. Assay validation was really affecting quality controls and ultimately patient samples. And I felt like, our practices of what I'm doing here are so bad that it's affecting patients' results. So then I went and I had some questions, and I went to Elizabeth and I kind of brought a couple of these things up, and she said, like, oh, that doesn't sound right, and like, I'll set you up with a meeting with the statistics vice president so he can explain to you how statistics is done. And I said that I've heard her say, and I've seen on our website, that our coefficient of variation is less than 10%, but I almost never saw that to actually be the case. And she said, no, I don't think we say that. Let's check the website. So we went around to her computer and looked at the website, and on the home page, first page, in big bold, it says CV less than 10%. And then in smaller writing underneath, it says vitamin D. And she says, we've only made that claim for vitamin D. It's not meant to be indicative of our assay performance as a whole. So who knows if this actually works in the real world? I said, we claim that we're fast, cheaper, more accurate, and I don't think any of those things are true. And he says, I don't think we've ever claimed that we're more accurate. I said, really? That's weird. And he said, if you see any materials that say we're more accurate, let me know. So I went back to my desk and you Google Theranos, and every article says faster, cheaper, more accurate, faster, cheaper, more accurate, faster, cheaper, more accurate. So I go back to him with all these articles and I say, like, what's going on here? If this is incorrect, we should actually go correct this information, since we're saying that we are bringing transparency to blood testing. So if this isn't correct, we should proactively correct it. And he said, yeah, I think Elizabeth just tends to exaggerate in interview type settings. Actually, instead asked that I write all of my concerns in an email. And I'm actually really thankful that I did that, because now it's all documented. So I wrote a really long email with all of these concerns in it and sent it to Elizabeth. And essentially Sonny replied, who was the president/boyfriend, saying, in an even longer email, and essentially just saying that I was arrogant, ignorant, patronizing, reckless, no understanding of math, science, or basic statistics, and that if I had any other last name, that I would have already been held accountable to the strongest extent. So
he doubled
That's
down.
why I decided to quit. I was naively hoping.
So eventually the truth started to surface, because in 2015 there was an investigative journalist at the Wall Street Journal whose name is John Carreyrou. So basically he started to look into Theranos, and why he started looking into Theranos because of whistleblower Tyler Schultz and Erica Chung. So what they did was that they told John about the shocking extent of the company's fraud. So according to John's investigation, he revealed that the editing device was completely unreliable and it has never been properly validated for medical use. Yes, that's one thing that the editing device did not get. Normally, when you put out a new device to the world, there would be a group of professionals that would validate the effectiveness of this device, but the editing device was not validated. Just like if you bring up a new type of food, you have to go to FDA to approve it. It wasn't approved.
Wall Street Journal investigative reporter John Carreyrou first broke that story last October.
Theranos wasn't able to do so to the agency's satisfaction, so the agency has now decided it's going to shut that lab down, and it's going to ban Elizabeth Holmes from the blood testing industry for at least 2 years.
Again, Walgreens, why didn't they ask for certification before they put this device in the stores? Like, why didn't they do it? Like, they made so many mistakes because of names. They trusted Elizabeth because of people that she was surrounded with. Then why are you a company and you're a pharmaceutical company? Like, literally. What if somebody comes and sell like a medicine to you, but because this person is related to Trump, you take it not knowing that it could have like a severe opioid inside? Literally, that's how I say it, because again, you didn't ask if it was verified, you did not ask for certification, you did not ask for any of this, and you just agreed for it to be placed in your stores without doing the proper check. I get it, you tried to take yourself away from it, but you should have checked all this before you even agreed to put the machines in your stores. Like, I don't understand why Walgreens decided to do that. They decided to take the shortcut without literally checking deep into it, like, because of names. Like, why are you going based on names, putting so many patients at risk? Because in my own opinion, Walgreens they need to take the fall, because why didn't you do your own research? Anyways, another thing that this journalist found in his investigation was that blood samples, which I said, they were often sent to traditional labs for testing instead of being processed by the Edison device, which was faulty, as we now know. Theranos had been misleading both its investors and its patients, and it endangered lives by providing false test results. The revelation caused an immediate public backlash, and it triggered a series of legal battles, regulatory investigations, and federal scrutiny, because by 2018, Theranos was forced to shut down, and its once celebrated founder, Elizabeth Holmes, faced multiple lawsuits and criminal charges. So now let's get into the criminal trial and the conviction of Elizabeth Holmes. So in 2022, after a lengthy legal battle, Elizabeth Holmes was found guilty on 4 counts of fraud. She was sentenced to 11 years in prison for her role in the scheme that cost investors just millions and put patients at risk. Her former business partner Rameesh, whose full name is Ramesh Sonny Balwani, was also convicted and he was sentenced to nearly 13 years in prison. I know, I did not really mention Ramesh as I was speaking about this. So basically, Ramesh was the CEO of her company and she had known him allegedly right from when she was a minor. And there was this rumor that said that her and Ramesh were in this sexual partnership, but it has not been confirmed, so I do not know about that. And Ramesh too was a party to everything, like everything Elizabeth Holmes did, Ramesh did. It's just that Ramesh was at the background while Elizabeth Holmes was at the forefront. Ramesh worked mostly with the employees according to my research, and during my research I also found out that Ramesh too used to make sure that they worked gruesome hours, and he was also heavy on firing people anyhow. He was not calmer than Elizabeth Holmes, he was literally worse. But Elizabeth Holmes, she was the face of the company. That's why when you Google Theranos, you see Elizabeth Holmes, because she was the face of the company. She wanted to be the face of the company. She was the CEO and Ramesh was the COO. That's the Chief Operation Officer. But anyways, the media attention was very, very intense when it came to this trial. However, Elizabeth Holmes, while she was waiting for the trial, she became pregnant during the proceedings, and some people suspected that she attempted to gain sympathy or manipulate the public's perception about her by getting pregnant. But through it all, her relationship with Sonny Balwani also came under intense scrutiny, because this was when people looked at their relationship and people came out and, like I said, they said that their relationship began when Elizabeth Holmes was in her late teens, and this raised questions about the power dynamics at play in their personal and professional lives. The fall of Theranos was a staggering example of ambition gone wrong, a reminder how corporate greed, unchecked power, and a culture of secrecy can lead to devastating consequences for both employees and the public, because the people that were working for her, now they've lost their jobs. The immigrants that came into the USA to work and they were so happy that they were getting a job, those immigrants right now, obviously their dreams has been shattered because they believed in this company, or they tried to believe in this company and they started to work here. And now, because Theranos has shut down, they have to go back to their own country, or they may have been deported. She destroyed so many lives. There's nothing wrong with having a dream. There's nothing wrong with having a dream. We all have dreams. I have my own dream. And again, I can understand when people try to wet your blanket when you tell them your dream. But at the end of the day, it's good to be very realistic. You have this dream, yes, cool. It's never happened before. You want to be an inventor. You want to be known in life for what you created and the legacy you've left behind. But there was nothing wrong with putting people in, the investors, telling them where you're at. For example, the original founders of Instagram. During my research, I found out that these people made no money from Instagram, and they did not come and act like they made money. They were truthful along the way, and that's how it should be. Maybe if you were even truthful and told them how it would be, who even knows, maybe the people would have wanted to invest more money. And again, she purposely did all this because she didn't want people to scrutinize her. She did not employ people who were in the medical field or who would have known that what she was doing was shit. She didn't employ them because she didn't want to be told of. She employed politicians, people who had big money, which at the end of the day came back to backfire her, because her investors and the people on her board of directors, they knew nothing about science. They only had big names and big money, and obviously she cared more about the credibility than literally about the innovation and the invention she wanted to make, which honestly, that is greed. That is corporate greed. She had these powerful people around her, and she made people who worked for her to swear this oath of secrecy. And yeah, all this just came back to backfire her. The downfall of Theranos was just a very dramatic and widely publicized saga, and it cultivated the media and the public alike. So what started as a promising tech startup company in Silicon Valley just turned into the most spectacular fraud in modern business history. And as the truth about Theranos failed technology emerged, legal proceedings against Elizabeth Holmes, its founder and the former CEO, they began in earnest. Her partner in crime, Ramesh Balwani, but I'll just be calling him either Balwani or Ramesh in this video. But anyways, her partner in crime, Ramesh or Balwani, he was, like I said, he was also the former president of the company and also the COO of the company. He himself, he also faced serious charges. Their criminal trials would unfold over years and there would be plenty of twists and turns along the way. Because in 2018, after a very lengthy investigation by the US Department of Justice and Securities and Exchange Commission, that's the SEC, Elizabeth Holmes and Ramesh Balwani, they were both charged with multiple counts of fraud. The charges stemmed from allegations that they had misled investigators, doctors, investors, patients, and the public about the capabilities of their blood testing technology. Elizabeth Holmes, she was charged with 9 counts of fraud and 2 counts of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. And these charges, they alleged that she knowingly deceived investors into funding Theranos under false pretenses, assuring that the company was on the verge of revolutionizing healthcare. Again, it's not wrong to dream, don't get me wrong, but she kept lying to these people, and that's a way of kind of extorting because you're collecting this money under false pretenses, and that is fraud because you're not saying the real reason why you're collecting this money for. And again, these people, they gave you this money thinking that they were helping, it was going to revolutionize healthcare, but in reality it didn't. And in reality, the Edison device never worked as it promised, and you did not tell them that it wasn't working. Instead, you deceived them, you lied to them, you made sure that these people emptied their pocket for something that wasn't even going to work at the end of the day. And Theranos had been secretly using traditional laboratory machines to process patients' blood samples. Balwani, on the other hand, he faced the same charges, with prosecutors claiming that he had actively participated in the scheme. He also participated in misleading investors and doctors and being deeply involved in the day-to-day operations of the company, because again, he's the COO, the chief operating officer. He was very heavy on sacking people. Anybody that questioned Theranos, questioned Elizabeth Holmes, or questioned his belief, he would sack them. Balwani was accused of also manipulating employees and also using threats to silence whistleblowers. Both Elizabeth Holmes and Balwani, they faced a possible sentence of 20 years in prison for each count of fraud, and the weight of these charges along with the potential prison time put immense pressure on both people. Anyways, Elizabeth Holmes' trial, it officially began in August of 2021 after years of delay due to the COVID-19 pandemic and other legal hurdles. Throughout the legal proceedings, Elizabeth Holmes attempted to deflect blame and portray herself as a well-meaning entrepreneur who made mistakes rather than a conscious fraudster. At the heart of her defense was the claim that she believed in Theranos technology and that she never intended to deceive anyone. Her legal team argued that investors and patients had been misled not by Elizabeth Holmes herself, but by miscommunications and unfortunate circumstances. She also tried to paint herself as this young visionary person in the pursuit of making a real difference in the healthcare industry, who later became overwhelmed by the pressures of running high-stakes startup. Elizabeth Holmes' defense also highlighted the controversial relationship between her and Ramesh, and it was suggested that Ramesh, who was like a way older man, had exerted significant influence over Elizabeth Holmes, both in their personal relationship and in their business dealings. So basically, she tried to put the blame on Ramesh, and her legal team, they sought to suggest that Ramesh was the one who pushed the company into unethical practices, and Elizabeth's emotional defense was just built around the notion that she had trusted Ramesh's leadership and that she was too naive to see the flaws in the company's technology. How can you be so naive? Like, you literally gave TED Talks, you literally spoke. Like, how can you be so naive? Obviously, in a move that garnered significant attention, Elizabeth Holmes, she testified in her own defense. You don't do that. You don't testify in your own defense. You're not a fucking lawyer. That's why we have lawyers Even lawyers do not testify in their own defense. But obviously, this was a very risky strategy because there are so many legal experts that have come out to say that defendants should not testify in such high-profile cases because it just gives the prosecution an opportunity to just cross-examine you. And oh my god, don't you guys watch court cases when they're cross-examining people? I'm like, bruh, I have ADHD. I won't be able to think that fast to just answer your question. I would be so dumbfounded. I'll literally black out. But that's why we have lawyers who are very, very quick to answer, okay? However, Elizabeth Holmes, she was very, very confident in her version of events and she wanted to tell her own side of the story. This is a thing where she just thought that, okay, I've been doing this for years, I've been able to convince people, but now people can see through your shit, so they wouldn't be able to listen to you. She thought she would be able to sway the jury and the judge, but obviously that did not work because when she went there, she detailed how she was inspired by the potential of Theranos technology to change the world and how pressures from investors, the media, and board members made it very difficult for her to admit failure. You could have just admitted failure. So many startups they've fallen. Like, was it Thomas Edison? Oh, she named it the Edison device. Hopefully it's Thomas Edison. I really don't know. But the person who created this light that we see now, like literally, he tried 99 times, was it? But he tried so many times and it failed until one day, maybe that's why she named it the Edison device, because it failed so many times. Hopefully it's Thomas Edison. Oh my god, now I'm connecting the dots. I am connecting the dots right now. But anyways, her testimony obviously was met with so much skepticism from so many people, including the jury themselves, and her defense strategy just it largely focused on her intent. She argued that she had not knowingly misled anybody, but again, the prosecution, they were not convinced. Nobody was convinced. And now let's go into Rameesh's trial. Rameesh, he was tried separately from Elizabeth Holmes, and his case just took a different tone because his trial began in March 2022 and his defense was even more combative because unlike Elizabeth Holmes, Balwani, he denied all the charges. He claimed that he had never deceived anybody and that the technology that Theranos had just simply failed. Yes, it had simply failed, but y'all did not tell anyone. You kept collecting money. He argued that the failure of the Edison device was due to mismanagement and technological setbacks, not fraud. And Rameesh, if I say Rameesh or Balwani, is literally the same person. So Rameesh's legal team, they suggested that he just acted in good faith and was simply doing the best that he could to run the company. However, as the prosecution just laid out their case, they painted Balwani as a central figure in the manipulation of investors, patients, and doctors. They presented evidence showing that Rameesh had been fully aware of the Edison device limitations and had actively participated in deceiving stakeholders about the capabilities of the technology.
So I go back to him with all these articles and I say, like, what's going on here? If this is incorrect, we should actually go correct this information since we're saying that we are bringing transparency to blood testing. So if this isn't correct, we should proactively correct it. And he said, yeah, I think Elizabeth just tends to exaggerate in interview type settings. Actually, instead asked that I write all of my concerns in an email. And I'm actually really thankful that I did that because now it's all documented. So I wrote a really long email with all of these concerns in it and sent it to Elizabeth. And essentially, Sonny replied, who was the president/boyfriend, saying, in an even longer email, and essentially just saying that I was arrogant, ignorant, patronizing, reckless, no understanding of math, science, or basic statistics, and that if I had any other last name, that I would have already been held accountable to the strongest extent. So
he doubled
that's
down.
why I decided to quit.
His emails and other documents showed that he had been deeply involved in the misleading statements that was made to investors and also to the public. Unlike Elizabeth Holmes, Rameesh's defense just tried to minimize his involvement by suggesting that he his actions were influenced by Elizabeth Holmes' leadership and that he had trusted her judgment, but it just did not work. But one thing that Rameesh did differently from Elizabeth Holmes was that he did not testify in his own defense, but the trial revealed increasing toxic atmosphere that was in Theranos, with Elizabeth Holmes and Rameesh perpetuating a culture of secrecy, intimidation, and fraud. So after months of testifying and after months of testimony and the jury's heard whatever they wanted to hear, they deliberated for weeks before finally reaching a verdict in January 2022. Elizabeth Holmes was found guilty of 4 counts of fraud, each for defrauding investors out of millions of dollars. She was acquitted on several other charges, but the damage to her reputation was already done. Elizabeth Holmes was sentenced to 11 years in prison, with her sentencing scheduled for later in 2022.
What a day.
Yeah, I mean, the emotions in there are just so raw. Everyone got silent in the courtroom. The judge gave kind of a long speech about how fraud is not an excuse for what goes on here in Silicon Valley. He sentenced her again to slightly more than 11 years. We are just about to get the surrender date. So she will not be taken to prison right now. But everyone just was silent after.
You did such a good job of setting the scene and letting us know, like, kind of the emotion, but a tweet doesn't speak,
Of course not.
the volumes that you can. And to see that she was on the stand and she was crying and really kind of begging for forgiveness.
Yeah, she did get her chance to speak. And again, we had seen her speak during the trial, and she was quite compelling and at times emotional. She got up today, gave a much shorter talk, apologizing, very contrite to her investors, to her family, to her employees, saying she realized she did things wrong. I don't think it swayed the judge. 11 years seems like something kind of on the high side from what I've been hearing from lawyers and legal analysts. But yeah, it was very emotional and very quiet when she finally got her chance to speak. And even before she spoke, the father of Tyler Schultz and the son of George Schultz, who was the investor, Tyler Schultz, the whistleblower, spoke looking directly at Elizabeth Holmes and saying, among the more cutting comments was, "You've heard a lot about Sunny Balwani being the bad guy. Elizabeth, you were the Sunny Balwani to my family." And he said that through tears too. So this was a case, a trial that ended in tears. What can I say?
I think that was really powerful, because a lot of people were saying, oh, so she defrauded rich people. Rich people parted with their money willingly, and they should have known better. But to hear that this young man, this whistleblower, really suffered that consequence and really created a rift in the family too.
It really did. The father spoke about how that rift was caused from grandfather to him, to his son, the Theranos employee, Tyler Schultz, and how it really ripped them apart because they didn't know who to trust. Because George Schultz, who we all know is a former Secretary of State, great man in American history, and big-time investor, trusted Elizabeth over the words of his own son, and that caused a big rift. And so the middleman in all this, Tyler's father, was quite broken up about this, and he clearly blames Elizabeth Holmes.
The interesting thing is that,
But anyways, for Elizabeth Holmes, the guilty verdict was a crushing blow to her carefully constructed image as a Silicon Valley genius. She had gone from being hailed as one of the youngest and most successful female entrepreneurs in history to a convicted fraudster. Her sentencing hearing was widely covered in the media, and many people speculated about how much time she would serve and whether she would appeal the conviction. I'm not gonna lie, even me, the first time I heard about her was in 2022 on a true crime podcast. That was the first time I heard about her, and then I listened to other podcasts about her, but then I forgot about her until recently. I was like, let me speak about this woman. Balwani's trial, which later concluded in 2022, resulted in his conviction on all charges of fraud. He was sentenced to nearly 13 years in prison, and like Elizabeth Holmes, he faced intense media scrutiny. Throughout both trials, the public spectacle just highlighted the extent of deception that was involved at Theranos, as well as the human toll that he had taken on those that were affected by the fraudulent test. So now let's talk a little bit about Elizabeth Holmes' pregnancy and the media attention that she had gotten from this, because during her trial, Elizabeth Holmes' pregnancy, it became a focal point in the media. She was visibly pregnant while awaiting her conviction, and of course course, this sparked a debate about whether she was trying to manipulate public opinion. Some people even speculated that Elizabeth Holmes was trying to garner sympathy during her trial by emphasizing her motherhood, and there were even discussions about whether her pregnancy would affect her sentencing or lead to her receiving a more lenient punishment. So while Elizabeth Holmes' pregnancy certainly drew attention, it didn't change the fact that she was convicted as one of the most serious corporate fraud in history. This case exposed just how greed, ambition, and deception could lead to the downfall of a once promising tech company and the lives that were forever changed because of this. So, what can we take out of this? The trial of Elizabeth Holmes and Rameesh just brought an end to the story at Theranos, but the scandal and its repercussions, they continue to resonate. Theranos' legacy is a cautionary tale about the dangers of placing blind faith in ambitious entrepreneurs who are willing to manipulate the truth in the name of success. It's a reminder that charisma, confidence, and powerful connections can only take a company so far, especially when they are built on lies. And for the patients who received inaccurate test results, the damage was irreparable because many of them, they went through unnecessary procedures, they went through invasive tests and emotional turmoil, all because they were misled about the reliability of Theranos devices. And for the investors, the fraud cost them hundreds of millions of dollars. For employees, the toxic work environment just left lasting scars on them, with many people feeling betrayed by a company that they believed was doing something good. Like I mentioned, people who were so happy to leave their home countries to come to America to fulfill the American dream, they literally, obviously, this cost them their dreams. Elizabeth Holmes and Rameesh Balwani's criminal conviction, of course, it marked the end of Theranos, but lessons from its rise and its fall will remain relevant for years to come. The story of Theranos is not just about corporate greed, but also about the dangers of unchecked ambition, toxic relationship, and the destructive power of deception. So guys, we've come to the end of this video. So if you enjoyed this, kindly like, share, subscribe, and turn on your post notifications so you get notified anytime I do post the content. Thank you guys so much. But before we go on, I just want to say this. So basically, I'm someone who loves history. I love to research. I love to know who created cement, who created this, who created that. I love to read about weird things. Like, I feel like I'm that kind of person that when you bring up topic, I've already I know a hint about it because I have read about it or have researched or have watched some sort of documentary. I'm literally that person. And even though I said that this channel, I speak about whatever I want to speak about, obviously I speak mostly about social commentary, but I'm also thinking of bringing history into it. I want to be able to tell you guys how that box was being created or how North Korea and South Korea are no longer friends. I want to be able to tell you guys stories like that. History is so cool and I want to bring it to YouTube, but I am so confused because on this channel I post twice a week and obviously I post on Saturday and Sunday, and I'm thinking of posting either on this channel, so one day will be for social commentary and the other day would be for history, or would you want me to open a different channel where I speak mostly about history? Because I am so confused. But y'all, I enjoy history and I just want you guys to see that part of me, and just literally history is so cool. So what do you guys prefer? I'm thinking of still having it on this channel, so Saturday would be for history and Sunday would be for social commentary. Anyone, but let me know what you guys think. I really do love and appreciate each and every one of you. So that being said, thank you so much for stopping by. Until next time, bye. Before you go, drop a yellow emoji. I don't know why I said that, but drop a yellow emoji. Until next week, bye.